All right, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about an empire that shaped our world for more than 1,000 years. It had laws, massive armies, powerful emperors, but what if I told you the name we all use for it is a total historical fiction? What if the empire we think we know never actually existed at all? Yeah, I'm talking about the Byzantine Empire. But that name, Byzantine, that's the whole problem right there. What if using that one single word has made us completely misunderstand 1,000 years of history? Okay, so here's the deal. The term Byzantine Empire is a modern invention. Like, really modern. It was made up by historians centuries after the empire had already fallen. And the people who lived in it for over a millennium, they never, ever called themselves that. They had a completely different name. So if they weren't Byzantines, then who in the world were they? Let's dig in and uncover their actual identity. This is where we set the record straight, using their own words. And the difference between our label and their reality is just massive. We call them the Byzantines. You know what they called themselves? Romamio. And Romaioi, that's just the Greek word for Romans. And this wasn't some casual nickname, you know? This was their official, legal, and cultural identity. In their own minds, in their own language, they were Romans. Full stop. And the proof is literally everywhere you look. Their official documents, they all say Roman Empire. Their coins were stamped with the titles of Roman emperors. Their legal system was a direct, unbroken line from Roman law. They didn't just think they were Romans. Their entire state was built to be the Roman Empire. But wait, you're probably thinking, didn't the Roman Empire fall in 476 CE? That's the date we all memorized in school, right? Well, it's only half the story. The truth is, there was an unbroken chain of Roman power that just kept going for centuries. See, to get this, you have to remember the empire was split up for, administrative reasons, but it was always considered one single Roman empire. So when the western half collapsed in 476, the eastern half, with its powerhouse capital in Constantinople, the new Rome, it just kept on chugging. And it didn't just keep going for a little while. It lasted for another 977 years. Let that sink in. Nearly a millennium. So to say the Roman Empire fell in 476 is to basically ignore almost 1,000 years of its existence. It's just wild. And this wasn't some kind of successor state or a brand new thing. The core institutions of Rome never left. Justinian's Code, which is the foundation of so much modern law, that was Roman law, compiled in Constantinople. The Senate, the army, the tax system, these were all Roman institutions that evolved over time, but were never ever broken. Okay, so if they were so obviously Roman, where on earth did the name Byzantine come from? Well, this is where the story gets less about history and a lot more about politics. It's basically history's greatest and maybe sneakiest rebranding. The term actually comes from Byzantium. And what was Byzantium? It was just the name of the small Greek town that was there before Emperor Constantine showed up and rebuilt it into his incredible new capital, Constantinople, back in 330. So yeah, the name of that tiny old town was later slopped onto the entire empire, after the fact. Now, get a load of this timing. The term Byzantine Empire wasn't even used for the first time until the 1500s. That's more than 100 years after the empire was gone. This means that for its entire 1,000-plus year history, not a single person who lived in it ever heard the word Byzantine. So why'd they do it? It was a brilliant and ruthless political power play. Back in 800 CE, the Pope crowned Charlemagne as the Roman emperor in the West. But this created a really awkward problem, right? Because there was already a legitimate Roman emperor ruling from Constantinople. So to make their new emperor look legit, Western writers had to start framing the Eastern Empire as something different, something less Roman, something they could call Greek, or eventually Byzantine. Okay, fine. So it's a misnomer, a historical mistake. But who cares? Why does getting the name right actually matter so much? Well, because it completely changes how we see the flow of history. The name itself tells a different story. Byzantine Empire makes it sound like a break from the past, a totally new, separate, kind of Greek thing. But calling it the Eastern Roman Empire shows the simple truth. It was an unbroken continuation of Rome. It just happened to be based in the Greek-speaking part of the world. And hey, it wasn't just them. Everybody around them, their neighbors, even their biggest enemies, knew exactly who they were.
The Arabs, the Persians, the Slavs. They didn't call them Byzantines. They called them the people of Rum. You know what that means? The Romans. And here is the absolute kicker, the final incredible piece of proof. When Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror, finally took Constantinople in 1453, what title did he give himself? Caesar-i Rum, the Caesar of Rome. Even the guy who ended the empire knew exactly what he had just conquered. So let's wrap all of this up. What's the final takeaway here? It's actually pretty simple once you cut through all that historical rebranding junk. Let's just do a quick myth versus fact. Myth: a separate Byzantine Empire existed. Fact: nope, they call themselves Romans. Myth: the Roman Empire ended in 476. Fact: only the western half did. The east kept going until 1453. And the biggest myth of all: the name Byzantine is just a neutral historical term. Fact: no way, it was a political invention, plain and simple. The takeaway is this: there was no Byzantine Empire. There was only ever one Roman Empire. When its western half crumbled, the eastern half carried the torch of Roman civilization for almost another 1,000 years. It's not a successor, it's a survivor. And that leaves us with one last thought, doesn't it? If something this huge, this well documented, a 1,000-year Roman Empire, can be mislabeled and misunderstood by pretty much everyone, it really makes you wonder, what other historical facts that we all take for granted should we be questioning?